episode of Profiles in Badassery, I talked to Vanessa Griffin, a college student, a black belt, and the head kids coach at Crazy 88 MMA in Baltimore, Maryland. In this interview, we talk about when and why she started Jiu-Jitsu, how she's earned every belt in between child and adult to become the first female black belt in her school at the ripe old age of 23. We discussed her beginnings in Jiu-Jitsu and how she went from being an assistant kids coach to the head coach over all of the gyms in her organization, her success in coaching kids competition, as well as her own wins at Pans, World, and other titles. At the end, she dropped some knowledge on what you can do as a woman to grow the sport for women and what she says should be the goal of more women in jiu-jitsu. Say is welcome, fellow badass. I feel like in your case, you are a little bit different than the other people that I've interviewed, because a lot of them have been in like martial arts for like 20 and 30 years, and in your case you're only 23 years old. The first thing I want to say is introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Vanessa Griffin. I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu primarily since 2011. I started when I was 13. I really just needed an activity to do. I didn't have any specific, it didn't matter to me. I was always into sports. I wanted to play football, baseball, everything. I was always outside playing with the boys. So I needed something to do because that's all I was doing. I started to get into that teenage phase where you just lock yourself in your room and you're on your laptop for hours. And then I was lucky enough to find Crazy 88, which was only a mile from my house at the time. So I could just walk there, and I was old enough to walk there, walk back without it being a problem, being safe. So I've been doing this for almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years in May. As of right now, I'm at UMBC. I'm about to register for my last semester, so I'll be graduating in December. And then I run the kids program. Yeah, I run the kids program at Crazy 88 right now, and they're doing really well. I have a lot of upper belts. I have belts from white to orange. I have a couple Pan Kids champions and a couple international champions that everyone in the school has helped me build. So it's definitely been a long ride. That's anytime someone tells me to introduce myself, it's always like head of the kids program, go to UMBC. I've been doing this for 10 years. So that's me.
All right. What do you study at UMBC?
Right. My major is media and communication studies, which branches out pretty far. We study old forms of communication with present forms. We study social media habits, kind of like a little bit of sociology, like human behaviors and how people interact with the media and different things like that. I remember I was taking a really fun class that was really interesting. It was like special topics, and we were talking about surveillance. So different things like that, just different, all forms of communication. We study the media a lot. We read a lot. One of my favorite subjects right now is the culture industry. And I did a couple projects on like the culture industry in America. So it's a very wide major with a lot of like different branches off, but I'm enjoying it. It's a lot of fun.
About your jiu-jitsu, you said you started when you were 13, correct?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Your mom got you into it. When did you figure out jiu-jitsu was that thing for you? Because I've seen your videos. It's that thing for you.
I definitely had different phases of that. So I actually remember after I loved it the first day, and then I think I went home, and the next day for whatever reason, I didn't like it. I don't remember. I can't describe it. Like I enjoyed the class and it was fun. I had my mom sign me up the first day. And then I think the next day or the night after, I was like, man, I don't know if I want to do this, but I think it was because my body was so sore. I couldn't move. And I played sport. I played like outside with the boys and all the time. And it was so different. I wasn't used to being that sore. And in my head, I was like, oh, maybe I don't want to do this, but I made my mom sign me up, and I was like, well, I at least had to give it a try. So then I went back the second day and I fell in love with it. Um, I got my yellow belt, I think 18 months to about 18 months in, I want to say. Maybe even shorter than that. I don't remember, but I remember there's always been women at the gym, which was very helpful for me. I had like teens and adults, and I kind of remember the phases of going from yellow. I went yellow belt, and then I had my orange belt in 6 weeks, and in a couple months I had my green belt. So I moved up really fast. Yeah. And I remember surpassing a lot of the women that were beating me. So there was a slow, it was like climbing up, kind of like climbing up the ladder. And I think by the time I reached green belt, I remember my coach's speech about it. And I think at that point I was like, okay, like I want to do this for a really long time. I got my blue belt 2 days after my 16th birthday. There's a really funny story about that my coach still brings up, but it was 2 days after my birthday, and he always brings it up because I'm salty about it, but it was for a good reason. And then I went to Naga, started competing as an adult. So that was like my third tier where I was like, oh, I really like competing. I had been competing since a white belt. I think I did my first tournament maybe 9 months in, and I won. I had one match by Kimura. And then, so it was different phases. Like I fell in love with it the second day. I started to kind of fall in love with the thing of like, I'm climbing up the ladder and beating all these women that were beating me up. And then blue belt, I really got into competing. And then once I had finally been old enough to compete at IWGF as an adult, I didn't really know what was going on. Like everyone talked about, oh, Pans and Worlds, go do it, go win it. And I didn't know what those were. I was like, oh, there's just a name behind a tournament. And I think once I won the Worlds and realized that it was a huge deal, I was like, oh, this is something that I'm in for forever now. And I want to say that was about 4 years in. And so I think I was cemented about 4 years in where I was like, oh, I'm going to make it to black belt and I'm going to compete there. And that was my final tier of like, oh, this is it for me. And from then I never really had any feelings of like wanting to quit or wanting to do something else. I was always kind of like, this is what I want to do. And this is like, I'm good at it. This is what I want to do. And it's leading to a lot of good opportunities, like running the kids program and having the mental toughness to deal with school and all the other things. So it was different. It was definitely different tiers, but I think I was cemented once I won the Worlds at blue. And that was like, once I realized how big of a deal it was it for me. I was like, this is a huge accomplishment. I'm not just going to move on to something else, you know? And I had already been well in love with the sport at that point. So I would say that was kind of the biggest turning point for me.
You mentioned one of like when you received your blue belt, you didn't think I forgot that oh, I want to hear the story of when you received your blue belt.
So the story, so usually it's a tradition for a lot of gyms, and I guess for 88 is that if you're a green belt or close, you just get your blue belt on your 16th birthday. So what had happened was I was ready to go to practice that night. I didn't think anything of it. I remember I told my mom that I didn't want to do anything for my birthday. I think like some plans had fallen through and she tried to make other plans, and I was like, I just don't want to do anything. I just want to train and go to the gym. She wasn't okay with that. And so she planned like a surprise birthday party at the gym. So they coaxed me over there. I was ready to go to practice. I was sitting by the mat ready to go, and someone told me that professor needed to get walking, which was the dog that we had at the gym. So I had to walk over there. And then everyone, like, I hate surprises. I don't think my mom ever knew that. I hate them. And everyone was like, oh, surprise, happy birthday. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And I think I asked my mom, I was like, well, can I still go to practice? And she was like, no, we're all going to celebrate for a little bit, and then I'm going to take you home. I said, okay.
Yeah.
And so, but the story, Julius thinks I told my mom that I was getting my blue belt, which is why she was there. But I was like, I did not tell her that. I don't ever know, like, I definitely did not tell her. And so I don't know if he's serious about it or if he's joking about it, but he's always like, oh, you told your mom that you were gonna get your blue belt, and so I didn't promote you for another 2 days. And so that's always the joke. It's like, I hate surprises and I hate attention. And that happened, and I definitely didn't want that. I wanted to just go train. And so I remember that was like a Monday. I went to practice on Tuesday, no blue belt. I went to practice on Wednesday and then finally got it. So it was 2 days after. So that's just a funny story. It's like, if you ask different people the story, they'll give you a different version of it. But that's my version. I wanted to go to practice. I was ready. I don't think I thought I was getting my blue belt. I don't think it was really in my mind. Because I've never, even when I got my black belt, I didn't realize that I was getting it that day. So I never have that foresight about it. But it's always funny if you ask different people why I got my blue belt 2 days after my birthday, everyone will give you a different story.
That sounds about right. Like,
he still brings it up too. This is what, math, 7 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, you're never gonna live that down.
Never.
You're gonna be like 45 and they're still gonna be bringing that story up.
Like, oh, absolutely. Like an 8-stripe black belt and still hear about the time that I didn't get my blue belt.
Yeah, your grandkids are gonna hear about this story. Go ahead and be prepared. So, All right, you said that you really progressed really quickly because I was like yellow, because I know it's. You sound like you didn't even get your gray belt. You just went from white to yellow.
Yeah, we didn't know the gray belt existed. We didn't that wasn't in our we weren't aware of it until we got a transfer student from Washington, who ended up being one of our Pancakes champions, but she came in as a gray belt and we weren't using the gray belt. And that was probably 2016. We
Yeah.
didn't know that it existed and what it was. And I was like, so I remember we had a coaches meeting and I was like, guys, we have a gray belt. Like maybe we should start using it. And everyone's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a kid. We don't need to use the gray belt. It doesn't exist. And I'm like, it exists. This child has it. And then we finally started using the gray belt, but it wasn't integrated into our system until years after I think I was a purple belt by the time we started using gray belts. And now I have a whole host of gray belts at different degrees, because before it was just yellow, orange, green if you had it. I think I was the first orange belt at the gym ever, actually.
Yeah.
It was probably like the sixth yellow belt that they had and like the second green belt. So it was all the kids' belts were still pretty new. And then we started using the varying degrees. So now we have like a gray and white belt, a solid gray, and a gray and black belt. And so I have the whole roster filled up of those belts, but it just didn't exist at that point for us in our mind. I know it existed as
Yeah.
a belt, I guess, for a while, but we just didn't use it until we had that girl come in as a solid gray belt. Then we were like, well, we have to use it now, you know? And I'm glad that we do.
Yeah. It's like because for kids, it's extremely important for them because I know for them to go from white to yellow, that how
It's
many
hard.
years? Yeah,
It's a
how
long
many,
time.
that's what I was about to say. For kids, they need that intermittent belt. That's why they have so many belts between white and green is
Yeah.
because you could give them once every 3 months, once every 6 months, and it keeps the kids motivated
Yeah.
because they're
That
constantly.
I treat all those different versions as a belt. So when the kids line up, it's if they're yellow belts, but if you're a yellow and white belt, you stand here. The solid yellow belts stand in front of you. The yellow and black belts stand in front of you. That way, to them, it's a different belt, but we don't have to compromise their rank, especially when we started going to Pan Kids a couple years ago. So the gray belt does really help because I mean we have to compete at gray, but then each version of the belt for us is different, and we try to treat it as a different belt. So it keeps kids motivated. And I'm like, listen, use the degrees, start them at this gray and white or yellow and white, and you have 3 years to keep promoting them, but they're still at that same color. And when they go to tournaments, they can be that color,
Yeah.
So, but we definitely we treat them as different belts, and they get like a certificate and they get a whole promotion, even when they just go to the next phase.
So when did you, okay, because you were a blue belt, and at what stage did you become the kids coach? Because you sound like you have a huge kids following. So
Yeah, I was teaching the kids with Timmy Spriggs. Tim Spriggs was actually a kids instructor at Crazy 88, and he competes at black belt now. He's done ADCC and all that. So me and him were running what we call Black Belt Club, which was just like the advanced kids class. And we were teaching that, and then on the other side you have intro, right? And in my head I got pushed into just volunteering when I was 14. One of the women there, Miss Kathy, she said, I was sitting on the side, she's like, you look bored, go help with the kids class. So okay. And so for like 2 years they started training me on how to do it. I got really good at it, was really good with kids, knew how to listen. And I was also very like creative and innovative with the kids classes. So at 16 I got officially hired, and I was teaching with Tim Spriggs for probably about 3 years. But the kids program for a little while wasn't really growing the way that our head coach Julius wanted it to. And then Timmy ended up and getting a full-time job. I think he was like a warehouse manager or something that was good for him. And I was like, yeah, you should go and do that, make money, go do your thing. And he told me that he was going to be leaving in a couple months, that he wanted me to take over just that advanced part. So I took over teaching the advanced classes in July of 2016. We ended up switching the whole belt system for the kids, revamping it, doing what we had to do. And then 6 months later, I took the kids to Pan Kids. They didn't do so well, but at that point, I knew I was invested in it. Probably a couple months after that, I ended up taking over the intro side too, which is our fundamentals classes. And then I became the program head, I want to say by the end of 2017. And so I've been doing that since then. Now we have a bunch of different locations. So I run all the classes, all the lesson plans and curriculums and all that stuff are all mine. I oversee all the promotions. And I've been doing that since 2017. And every year we take the kids to Pan Kids. Every year we kind of like revamp what we're doing. And I think right now it's in a really, really, really good place where the classes are going well. The kids are coming in, they're loving it. All the kids are competitive. So I've been doing that since then in varying degrees.
So you have been the head instructor since like 2017. What is your best memory of teaching your students? What is your best memory?
When we got shut down for COVID, it was pretty rough. And when we opened up, we were allowed to open up in June. It was very limited. So everyone's wearing masks. Everyone has to be separated. So I would say my best memory is probably over the last 3 months when we finally got clearance and permission to run our classes regular. And our classes run now completely different and so much better than they did before. So now I have like a specific lesson plan and games. And I think my best memory was I was talking about Miss Kathy. She's been there forever, and now she has 2 kids that are in the program. And I think one day she came up to me and told me that her son he was okay with jujitsu, like he liked it, it was cool, but she came up to me one day and she said, he's really liking the classes. He asked to go, he's enjoying it, he has a really good time on the mats. And that's for me when I was probably my best memory of just like knowing that I can get kids that maybe aren't really into jiu-jitsu to still come and love the classes and love the programs, regardless of what they want out of it. Like some kids just want something to do, some kids want to be competitors, but I think realizing that the program that I built was good enough for all types of kids from all different backgrounds, ages, hobbies, likes, dislikes, even athleticism and coordination levels, that they all love to be there and they get something out of it. But I don't have a specific like teaching memory that I have. I just think, getting the reassurance that we were coming back really, really strong from the COVID pandemic was that was big for me. It's always nice to hear that the kids are enjoying it and that it's something that I was able to build with the help of the other coaches and stuff like that.
You won worlds at blue belt at world's blue belt at 17.
Mm-hmm.
Like have you won any of the other worlds? Was it?
Yeah, so at my the first year I started competing at adult in IBJJF, I had double gold at Pans in March and then won the worlds in May, just my weight class. I lost in the open. Got my purple belt in 2017 when I was 19. Again, I don't think I double golded at Pans, but I won my weight class. I don't remember how I did in the open, but I definitely won my weight class at Pans, and then won the worlds at 2017 at purple belt in the gi. So I had a pretty good gi run up until then. And then at brown belt, I struggled for the first 2. I was a brown belt for 3 years. I think everyone kind of gets stuck at one belt. So for me, it was brown.
Yeah.
I took second at Pans the first year. The second year I took third at the worlds. And so 2018, I took second at Pans at brown in the gi. 2019, I took third at the worlds. And then I won Europe in 2020. And then I won Nogi Worlds at the end of at the end of 2019, I won Nogi Worlds at brown, and then I won Europe in the gi in 2020. Then we got shut down, and then I got my brown belt. So the brown belt year was definitely more of a mess than the other belts were, but I did get a couple titles. So it was Nogi Worlds at middle, Europe at middle, and then I had a couple medals. I had 1 silver medal at gi Pans and 1 bronze medal at gi Worlds. So brown belt was kind of a mess, but then I got my my black belt in 2020, and then I've just been competing at like regionals since then.
Yeah, well, there's nothing really open yet because I was like,
yeah.
I remember at the end of 2019, I was like, I'm gonna start competing. And 2019, and then like early 2020, I'm like, I was chomping at the bit, and then everything shut down.
Yeah, the season was canceled because we went to Europe. Luckily, we did go to Europe, which was nice, and then Pans was canceled, and since then it's just been like, the Pans hasn't been as hefty, and it's pretty much just been all the regionals and stuff.
It's very sporadic. I've noticed it's extremely sporadic, and it's very helter skelter. It's like you don't know, like they'll open it and like 2 days after they open it, it's closed because it's filled
Yeah.
up.
And the roster's super unstable. I was supposed to have it was supposed to be 4 of us in my weight class this weekend. One girl dropped out last minute and I didn't realize it till I checked the brackets. So it was 3 of us, but then one of the girls just didn't show up. So then I ended up just having to fight one person in my weight. I fought her twice and then I had to open against a large human being and then got a and then I got one nogi match. So it was definitely a mess. I think I probably was supposed to have at least another like match or 2, but you do the best with what you can, especially at this time when it's just an unstable roster and people aren't showing up because maybe they got sick or maybe they had, something they had to do. So it's very unstable, but we're trying to stay busy.
Yeah, as one of the larger people, well, I'm not apologizing. I'm a larger person. I will use every sixth.
Oh yeah, I wasn't mad. I mean, we had a conversation after. It was a 0-0 referee's decision. And I told my coach, I was like, I couldn't do anything, but just made sure she couldn't either. And I was like, I knew I lost the decision because she was obviously attacking and trying to, progress the match, and I just couldn't. So, but actually, we were joking. We were like, yeah, if I was big, I'd probably done the same thing. I'm not even mad. It was a fun match. I definitely have fun. I like doing the opens. But we had a funny conversation where me and my coach were like, yeah, if we were that big, I probably would have done the exact same thing too. I'm not even mad. It was a fun match. I was cool with it.
Okay, so what weight class are you about?
I do middleweight normally.
Middleweight. Okay, so she was probably either a heavyweight or super heavy.
I think she had she was a super heavyweight.
Oh damn! Damn, that's awful.
My back definitely hurts, but looking back at the match, I'm sure it was winnable. Like anytime you go against someone bigger, your strategy kind of has to.
It has to change.
The strategy for me was like, let's try to score an advantage because she's not going to pass, but let's try to score an advantage so it doesn't go to decision. Because in my head, I was like, if this goes to decision, like I lose, obviously, because I can't do anything. So in my head, I was like, let's try to just put a choke in and get some sort of advantage. And I didn't do it. I didn't do that. So I lost. And I'm never upset about losses. I don't make excuses because I'm sure looking back and doing that match again, there's probably some sort of way that I can win somehow. It's not an unwinnable match, and it's something that it's good to have because then it's like, well, now you know the strategy. Now let's work on it and try to make it so that you can win next time.
You just had a match. You just had a few matches. Like was today Monday, yesterday, and the day before.
Mm-hmm.
But of all the matches that you've ever had, is there one that's more memorable, and why is it the most memorable match you've ever had? Because I've got one like right off the top for me, but what about?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a handful, but for me, I was definitely lucky to be at a gym where the mentality is, don't hide from anybody. So when I only took 2 losses at blue belt out of like maybe I think I had a total of 30 matches. I only took 2 losses. So when I went to purple, and I didn't get submitted, right? So I went to purple. My first match I get submitted. So it's like, dang, and my coach jokingly looked at me. I had to go to the medic table. It was bad. Like my shoulder was jacked up, and I go over him with like my belt as a sling. I just look at him and he goes, "Welcome to purple belt." I said, "All right, thanks." And then that was the end of my day.
Okay, that's not making me feel better because I just got my purple belt a year ago.
Oh, don't worry, it'll be fine.
Oh, you're good. Me, I had to use my belt as a sling.
Yeah, so that so it was that girl. She was very good. And we had a lot more matches. I want to say we had 4 or 5 matches where she beat me. 3 of them by submission, and I was not used to getting submitted in tournaments that often. So we fight a lot of purple belt. She goes to brown belt. I'm still doing my 1 year at purple belt, and then that's the year that I ended up winning pans and worlds. Then I go to brown belt. And I want to say the end of the season, right before the Worlds in 2018, we go to New York. And I was going to have to fight this girl in the finals. And I think, like I said, it had been 4, I want to say it was 5 losses to her in a row every time we fought. And then this match, I got it back. I think it was like 6-2 or 6-5 or something, but I finally got it back. And ended up winning the division at middleweight at brown right before the World. So it was a nice confidence booster. So that was the match that was memorable. I don't remember how the match went. She must have swept me or passed me or something. And then I got into my closed guard and bump swept her to mount. So I had 6 points. ahead of whatever she had. And then it was like a little bit longer after that, and then I had won. And so it was like I avenged a loss that I had taken 5 times, and it was such a relief. And in my head, anybody that I fight that I lose to, I don't care what weight they are, like I want that revenge. And I think that was the first time that I had gotten revenge over someone that had beaten me. And ever since then, I think I've done that. I think I've gotten like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 people back that I had lost to. Like one girl beat me at New York, and then I ended up submitting her in DC like a year or 2 later. There was one girl who I kept losing to by like advantage like twice, and then finally I threw her and won the match the last time we fought. So that match right there kickstarted my want to, not duck anyone. I'll move up and down weight classes just to fight the people that, that have beaten me on purpose. Like I don't duck anybody. If I have the opportunity, I'll go and move up and I'll fight them. So that was the match that kickstarted that mentality, and that if I lose to someone at some point in time, I'm going to get it back,
Like, what did you wish you knew when you started that could help someone who is starting?
I would say not to be discouraged by the perception that you have as a female in the sport. I know that there was a lot of fights for like equal pay for women and stuff like that. And I think it's important to remember that on a technical level, we can be just as good as the men. And, we can be deserving of some of the same, opportunities, like all these 8-man tournaments for $10,000 that they get, and all these, bonuses for money. Like focus. I would stay in it. 1, stay in it. Like we need more women in the sport, of course. 2, don't be discouraged by, the opportunities that the men are getting. Just get your jiu-jitsu technical, compete as much as possible, compete in as many divisions as possible. Like be a part of the numbers growing so that we can get the same recognition as men. Because I always say, like I've heard men be like, oh, it's easier to get a female world champion. And I'm like, make sure you understand that's because there's less women, not because it's any easier on a technical fighting level. Right.
I've told some of my guy friends to have said that. I'm like, you've obviously never had to go against another woman.
Yeah, I train with men and I beat most of them, right? So it's
like it's a completely different feel when you go against another woman.
Like I had to tell someone, they were like, oh, it's easier for them. And I was like, in what degree? Yes, there's less, but there's nothing that I can do about that. I train just as hard as you guys. I can spend the same amount of money to compete just as much as you guys. And arguably my technique, I still think that there's definitely development and growth of the women's sport that needs to happen. Like when I talk about a technical level, I was like, there are some things that women just aren't dealing with on a technical level right now. Like Barambolos and the lapel guard and all that stuff is just not in the women's sport as much as it is in the men's. So there is a bit of like a
gap.
A little bit, yeah. I recognize that there's definitely a gap, but it's because, like, again, there's less women competing, but the sport is developing into being something where, like, especially nowadays, it is a huge accomplishment for a woman to be a world champion. Everyone's like, oh, she only had 2 matches. I was like, yeah, but she had to fight an extremely technical black belt to get there. So I would say just don't get discouraged by the difference between like men and women's jiu-jitsu. I train with men a lot of the time. A lot of them I can beat, a lot of them I can't, but I just say grow. We got to grow the sport in numbers, compete as much as you can, compete in as many divisions as you can, don't duck matches, go into divisions, go into filled divisions, make the divisions huge so that, we get the same respect. Because like I said, we train as much as a lot of us train I train as much, if not more than a lot of the men in my gym. And so we just have to, we can't just beg for equal rights in jiu-jitsu. We have to actually like show up and put in the work and do what we got to do it. So I really wish that, there would be more women in jiu-jitsu, because that's the biggest issue. As soon as there's as many women in jiu-jitsu as there are men, we're set, we're fine. And I just think that we definitely need more women to be developed, be technical, be engineers, be pioneers of the sport. Let's just grow the sport to be as big as we can, get as many matches as we can, get as many people in the sport as we can, get as technical as we can, so that we can get some of the same opportunities.
Do you have a YouTube channel or anything that you want to promote? Because I've seen you do a lot of tutorials and instructionals. Anything you want to shout out?
Oh yeah, for sure. My Instagram at Griffin BJJ. I'm trying to get, grow that and be another person that, a lot of the technique videos are for men. So I want the women to make more technique videos and be a resource. And I want people to know that like women can be good coaches too. That's another one of my, like, as far as also being a good competitor, I would love to be, you know, a good coach. Obviously, like if you look at all the major teams, the guys sitting in the coaches chairs are men. So I want, you know, women to be a more powerful force. So, you know, my goal one day is to be a black belt world champion, but also sit in the chair for one of my students one day that's trying to go for black belt world champion. So I post a lot. I post weekly technique videos or highlights depending on what that week is. So I'd say at Griffin BJJ. And then I want to speak and shout out my sponsor, Moya brand. They've believed in me. They've been great, super supportive. They helped me go and compete. And they've also given me a lot of attention as well in the sport. So that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. It has been,
Thank you.
I mean, it's been wonderful. Like, I am so happy that I actually got a chance to interview you. And all I can say is hopefully I'll get to see you on the mats one of these days.
Hopefully.
All right. See you later.
Thank you so much. Bye.